Hello, welcome to Forest Focus. Defeat for Nottingham Forest at the weekend as they lost 4-2 to Aston Villa on the back of a dire first half with manager Nuno coming under scrutiny for his team selection. We'll discuss all that and Forest's inconsistencies, if they actually are that inconsistent, in the company of, first of all, Reds fan Michael Temple. Temps, you've been a busy man this morning. Are you well?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Just went for a run at an inopportune moment, so apologies for my red head, but seems like normal business. The comments are just giving you a kick in for being late. So, yeah, everything feels normal-ish.
Well, the reason we're slightly late is because Greg Mitchell has had the excellent idea to do the podcast from the Trent Navigation. The not so excellent idea to be sure the Wi-Fi is working very well. So, Greg Mitchell, how are you?
Saying he's been for a run. I'm down the pub, so hear me. That's how we're getting on.
We'll see how this goes. You might be booted out of this podcast quite soon. We'll see how it goes. Our third guest today, who distracted me at the start there, is former Reds midfielder David Prutton. Prutz, are you well?
I'm good. It's very on brand, isn't it, for Greg to do it from the nav, which I think is good broadly for the pod. I mean, the fact that we can't hear him and won't be able to hear him is a bit of a bummer. But yes, I'm very well and lovely to see all of you and happy to chat.
Good. I'll throw the first question Temps' way and then see how Greg gets on. Give us an overall summation of the game, Temps, what you made of it.
Villa didn't have to play very well to beat us. It was a canter for them at times. And when we did get that foothold in the game, the Elanga half chance was the one that could have swung it for us, but it didn't. Don't think we deserved too much with the manner in which we defended. I think we probably called it right in discussing the importance of the fullbacks in this game. We've lauded Nuno, haven't we, for being braver, bolder and pushing them forward. But you have to be positionally aware when you do that. And anyone analysing us would counter it by saying there's going to be space in behind if the fullbacks vacate their post. We stuck Niakhate in there. It didn't work. It was obvious he was going to get dragged after that first half performance. But the mistake and the first goal was kind of a indicator of the matchup in the first half. Villa popped it around at will, found pockets of space everywhere. They do have so many quality players in the midfield. So got what we deserved, unfortunately. One or two bright spots, but that's a fair result given the performance.
I'll ask Greg. You might need to. Someone said plug directly into the router, Greg, which is actually quite a good idea. And someone said put your responses in the chat like you're a hostage. Just send us some Morse code or something. What were your feelings on the game, Greg? Emotions coming out of the ground?
It was a game that we were in for 10 minutes. It felt like, it was awful, really. It couldn't have been any worse. And then to somehow be in the game and half was just ridiculous and classic Forest, really. It was on brand for us.
You're going to have to plug into the router, I think, directly. Otherwise, I'm going to have to turf you out. I feel bad, but you're a bit too broken up sound-wise. So try and plug into the router. Otherwise, find another place to do it. Sorry, Greg. This sounds really bad. That was brutal, wasn't it? I don't like to be brutal.
Have you kicked him out? That's amazing.
No, I haven't kicked him out. He's exiled himself. He's taken the bullet nobly. So,
Matt, what about that lady that watches is in the bath? She might just be happy just looking at Greg.
She might be. Well, she might be. My parents were over at the weekend and they were talking about the podcast. My granddad watches this every day, part of his daily routine in his 90s. Absolute hero. He's a fan of yours, Temps. And then my mum was saying that Greg's her favourite. So, yeah, maybe she just doesn't watch it in the bath, though. But, yeah, it's a family affair. So.
There's a great comment there that someone just said, all I heard from Greg was Forest and ridiculous, which I think probably sums up the weekend, doesn't it? So, I mean, that's his take on it, Fox. Any more detail? Do we need it?
Why were we so bad compared to West Ham then, Prutz? What do you think? Because we played so well against West Ham, and that first half was an absolute shambles from the defensively and in midfield probably. So I've written down here lack of experience, lack of desire, lack of mental strength. What's your take on it as a former player?
I mean, there are three very damning descriptions of it. Why was it like that? Because Forest are inconsistent. That's why Forest find themselves in that portion of the table. I think we've discussed that before. Why a team that can kind of the pendulum can swing so much is the real question that Nuno's got to try and answer. But I think take the game and the goals, again, it's something that is discussed across the Premier League about teams that are trying to assert themselves and consolidate. You've got to make it hard for the opposition. And everyone that watched that game, was at that game, have seen the goals, didn't have to work too hard at all. You're relying on players that have been very, very good in recent weeks. Murillo being one of those, was way too easily beaten alongside a lot of his defensive companions. And then as you throw that forward, as you quite rightly say, Matt, because defending is not just the back defenders, it's collectively, it's from the front. And with the midfield being very, very easily bypassed, it made for that horrendous concoction of the whole team not turning up. Douglas Luiz's goal, his headed goal, it was like a crossing and finishing session. There was nobody picking him up anywhere at all. So when you are watching that, you are watching the scores come through, you're thinking it could be a bit of a kicking for Forest against it. But let's be frank, a very, very good Aston Villa team. They are a very good Aston Villa team, even though we're talking about, you kind of mentioned in this side in dispatches and their relatively recent history of being a championship club, Aston Villa, but they've just gone through the levels this season and beat a Forest side without really needing to be absolutely at the best, but showing a squad and a first 11 that absolutely used class, and Forest were just absolutely nowhere near it. And if you give a team of that type of ability that much of a head start, then you're not going to win a Premier League football match at all.
No, true. Right, let's head Greg back in. This looks a bit more promising. Can you hear us okay, Greg?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good. That's better.
Excellent. Sorry.
No, you're all right. You're all right. Good to have you with us properly. Yeah, picking up on kind of what you said before, which we almost heard then. Were you pretty annoyed coming away from the ground or not?
Yeah, because like I say, we got into the ground full of hope and expectation. People seem to have this, you get this feeling every so often you might just scrape something, and, you know, Villa are top four, but the way we started so poorly, it was like you felt like the game was gone within 5 minutes. And then to somehow, 5 minutes in the second half to be well in this game that we've just shown absolutely nothing in was just classic Forest and kind of on brand with where we are. So, just came out the ground disappointed because we were so close, as mad as it sounds, to getting something where it was one of those games where we really didn't deserve it. So we're a team that always seems to score now. We've got so many goals in us, but we've also got such costly mistakes, and we've just got to have a couple of games without them in, like we did against West Ham, and we'll be fine.
Do you think, Temps, one of the things I put in the title is about inconsistencies? I mean, actually, are we that inconsistent? Because we're consistently bad at defending and giving goals away. So it was West Ham an outlier in a sense of what we can be. And really, this is often the baseline for how we defend during games.
Nuno's rolled the dice, made us more attacking at the expense of defensive solidity. You only need to look at that 3-2 stat that's being rolled out constantly, and the fact that we're always on the wrong side of it. So I'll repeat what I've said for the past 2 weeks. There will come a point at which he has to decide if we're going to try and sneak 1-0, or we're happy to throw the dice and try and score, almost knowing the opposition are going to too. So it's tough, isn't it? We are scoring a lot more goals since Nuno came in. We can see why. We're consistently playing two wingers. We've got our best striker back on the pitch, and Morgan Gibbs-White is firmly our number 10. But giving those four such attacking freedom comes at a price. Your fullbacks need to be on it. Your anchors in midfield need to be on it, need to work in tandem, need to understand where each other are going to be. And there were moments when it came together. You look at the goal where we dispossessed the midfield, didn't we, and sprang the break. So Dominguez didn't have his best game. I don't think him and Danilo necessarily have formed a partnership as such at the minute, because they're so dynamic. There are moments when it looks great and looks really fluid, and there are moments where they're perhaps not as positionally aware as you might want them to be. But we're going to see team changes for the next couple of games, given that we've got a cup game first before we return to the Premier League stuff. So he's got to work out what he's going to do, and I think he's got to find a specialist left back first and foremost to make that many changes to the defensive unit in half time in a Premier League game is an admission that he got it wrong. It's a hindsight thing. I can see why he willed Niakhate to do well, because his physical attributes, his calmness on the ball, suggest that he might be okay there, but he's looked horrendously out of his depth. So yeah, this is going to be the norm while we do this. We're going to score and concede, and we're consistently coming out on the wrong side of high scoring matches at the minute. And I just wonder how long it's going to be before he has a change of gear, or does he get himself past the Liverpool game and look at that next run of 3 fixtures where it might pay off?
We'll come on to team selection shortly. It is one of the other big talking points around Niakhate. One of the things that was said on the post-match show on Saturday, Temps, by Mark, was that teams don't have to play well to beat us. Like Villa are really good, but they didn't have to play their best. Brentford didn't have to play their best. Newcastle at home was an absolute cluster, defensively for us. And there's been a long list of games like that. I mean, would you kind of sometimes quite fancy playing this Forest team? Because when they're at it, but when they're not, is there a bit of a soft underbelly there, Prutz, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the three points that you made at the top about what was lacking are really quite damning statistics. Not statistics, takes on it with regards to mental resilience and desire. There's just no... Again, you end up falling into a kind of really cliche territory of what games are like in the Premier League, there being no easy ones at all. And if you are not absolutely at your best, which Forest quite clearly weren't, then you're going to get your backsides handed to you, which they quite clearly were. So that ability to be solid on the road, well, that was the finger that was pointed under Coops towards the end, wasn't it? About being solid enough not to lose games, not necessarily going and winning games, but in games that you hope to just squeeze a point out of to keep that tally ticking over the course of a season in the Premier League. That was the soft underbelly that was being kind of referred to in that instance. So, as Temps is saying, Nuno's done a lot of very, very good stuff. But then if you look at that game in isolation, there was a picture of him on the touchline. And obviously sometimes you don't know whether that particular picture fit that particular part of the game. I understand how that can be all put together. But just a very slow, small shake of the head, because he'd be looking at that defending going, as a coach, and as we talk about it here, and we've all seen a lot of football, and if you take my background and you're meant to look at it from a relatively informed point of view, looking at that, you are looking around going, I don't really know what's going on other than players being very poor in these particular situations. Again, that Luiz goal, the headed goal, I don't understand how anyone can be almost inside the 6-yard box with nobody near him. I think the player that he beat to get to the header is his own player. There's 2 of them in the same position waiting to head it in. Working your way back through the goals, you can always try and find the nugget of where it comes from. We'll talk about Niakhate, bless him. I mean, those type of games where it is almost kind of everything's coming by you in a blur, because he just looked like he didn't know where he was geographically at all compared to everybody else. Whether that's a communication thing, whether that's Maria helping out a player who by trade is more central based and saying, stay tucked in here, because you don't go wandering. If you don't know the position at fullback, you do not go wandering. You make sure that whoever's on the inside of you as a central defender is as close as possible, because selfishly, you mess up, you both mess up. Sorry, boss, it was collectively, the minute you go on your own, it just looks like his fault. And that's compounded by the fact that you get the first goal, if you like, a tap-in for a player that has how many amounts of assists and goal inclusions and goals this season, and what you're looking at going, if all else fails, go and stand next to the player that scores all the goals. Very rudimentary, very simple, when we can over-intellectualize that. But the minute that he's got a position where he can tap it in, that just sets an horrendous template for the rest of the game, which, as you said, Matt, Forest on the weekend did not have the fortitude to come back from, whether that's mental strength, whether that's physical capacity. You start the second half relatively bright, and then it goes downhill once again. There was a real problem with that, managing the emotions of the game. And a poor start in the Premier League can absolutely kill you, and it did.
True. Do you think they're good enough players? Because I don't want to lose sight that Villa are really good. Like, they're a Champions League side, and our players can have really good matches. And I think we've got a lot of tools of a mid-table team, Prutz. But when push comes to shove, do you think these players, a few of them, like defensively more, I'm thinking, obviously our front four is good. Defensively and in midfield, with what we had on the pitch on Saturday, are they good enough to be where we want to be? That's a really harsh question, but do you see the quality in there?
To be where?
established Premier League team.
And what position's that, and what point tally's that?
13th, 45, something like that.
13th and 45. So if you go on that merit, Palace, Fulham, Chelsea, West Ham, Newcastle, Wolves, Brighton, Man U, Spurs, Villa, Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, all categorically better than Forest. Bournemouth on the day, Brentford on the day. That then leaves Forest, Everton, Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United, 3 teams that were in the Championship last season. They are where they are, possibly because they should be. We've talked so much on this podcast about players in and out, and how you get a team from, say, 16th into somewhere near the top half. You have to spend a lot of money. Forest won't be able to do that. You have to make sure that hidden gems are found, which I don't think Forest have done. Maria probably notwithstanding. The business that we've seen Brighton do, whether that's a different debate about a different model of how to go about it and about a different level of investment. This current collection of Forest players, again, by definition, being where they are in the Premier League, is going to be inconsistent. And without sounding defeatist, and again, it's something we've discussed on here about trying to run before you can walk in Premier League terms. And the thing that I totally get on board with Forest fans is the timing of this, the generational timing of Forest having proper wealth, but being unable to spend it. I absolutely get all that. I totally get all that. But rules is rules. That's the kind of way it goes. And we'll soon find out what happens with that particular thing in Forest spending. But the players that they brought in broadly are possibly 16th, 15th, 17th place Premier League players. That's not no disgrace in that. I was part of a team that finished 7th in the Premier League with Southampton. I was also part of a team which was crap and got relegated from the Premier League. And you end up relegated because you're not as good as the rest of them. That's just the way it works. So that essence of getting where Forest want to get to, it's got to be year-on-year consolidation until you know then what you can spend, what you're allowed to spend, and what you're going to do moving forward financially, and then raising the bar every single season.
Yeah, that was a bit of a devil's advocate question, because I do think a lot of the players are good enough. It's just, I was going to say on their day, we need to see more of their day. So obviously Murillo's great, Olarena, the AFCON players are a factor in the defeat. Sangare might have made a difference. Dominguez is good enough, and the front four are good enough. But I think we'll see a churn in defence again over the summer. And there's still a question on the goalkeeper, who I think's done well, but I don't think he's nailed down that position yet, personally. Right,
has he been? Sorry to butt in, chaps. Has he been categorically better than what we've seen in the goal this season for Forest? Has it been one of them where you've gone, wow, he's saving us several points over the course of between now and the end of the season?
What do you think, Temps? I'll throw it to Greg as well.
Well, the one where he could have made himself an instant hero is keeping Bruno out against Newcastle, wasn't it? So, he saved what we'd expect him to save. He is a massive upgrade on Turner. We've seen direct through balls over the top for Taiwo to run onto. So there's a footballer there as well as a safe pair of hands. He's a big upgrade on Turner and Vlachodimos. Is he going to be there next season? Well, I hope so, because if we sign another one, that'll be 6 goalkeepers that we're paying, won't it? So I'm still backing him. Yeah, he's not quite Brice Samba for me yet, but he's my goalie.
What about you, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, it's not been his mistakes, has it? Unlike the other keepers, the glaring errors, it's been more defensive errors, and he's been as busy as those other keepers, and we've had better results. We've had clean sheets for starters. And I mean, going back to the question you asked Prutz, I think you asked that question 4 days ago and we all make completely different answers. And that's the beauty of these podcasts, isn't it? That, you're only as good as your last result. And that's such a cliche, but it's true. And I look back at West Ham and how dominant we were and how much we deserved that game. And then we go away to a top 4 side. And of course it's different. And without those, those lapse in concentration and those silly errors, it is a different scoreline. So I've still got so much belief in this team. We've just got to cut out those individual errors, and when we are under so much pressure, they're going to come. You just hope there's someone behind the next person to back them up. So it was such a bad day on Saturday, but it wasn't the doom that I keep seeing online. It was just a bad day at the office. And, We've got to remember where we've come from and where we're going. And we've got Man U and then Liverpool in the next 3 or 4 days. So, tell me that 2 years ago and we're absolutely delighted. And to believe that we could actually get something against Man U, which I still very much do. And then obviously Liverpool's the one. But yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as it seems to be spoken about online at the minute. We had a bad day, we had a couple of bad errors, but we've shown some absolute brilliant attacking again, and we can score against any team in this league. It's just sorting it out at the other end, which seems to be the issue.
Thank you very much, Steve Maxwell, for becoming a member. Very much appreciate that. There were a few other people who became members over the weekend, and I'll read out your names at a later date. Although one of them was also Pete Blackburn of this podcast, which was very kind of Pete to lend his support. He'll be on Wednesday as well and Friday, and he did ask if Prutz could be on Friday with him because he's a big fan of yours, Prutz. So yeah, sorry, Pete. I know, mad, isn't it? Let's also
very nice
take
thing
a word.
to say. I mean, you don't hear it much, but it's nice thing to say. Does that now mean that we've all got to kind of chip in now that Pete's done it? We've all got to do the same thing.
I mean, there's no obligation, but if people want to,
But it looks
I'm just going to pay Matt's Wi-Fi bill directly and Greg's.
I want expenses for driving to the NAV and my coffee.
All out of choice. Talking of the NAV, thank you very much for their support. Very much appreciate it. You can get down there before the Man United game on Wednesday. Food courts, barbecue, outside bars, and obviously the game is on the big screen. I think, are we on TV on Wednesday? I think it's on.
Yeah, BBC One.
Yeah, Wayne Rooney's there was the shout, isn't it?
Ah, lovely. So it'll be on the big screen, certainly. Here's the quick video so you can see what the match day experience is like, and we shall see you in 15 seconds. Right, we've got loads to get through, and we haven't got very far yet. So let's crack on with team selection. Niakhate then temps. Nuno's getting a lot of flack for it. Everyone's saying he should have played Toffolo. I did this research over the weekend about the amount of games Niakhate has played at left back. He's played 60 games, as I said on Saturday's show. But then looking further, the vast majority of them are in the French second division when he was just coming through. I think he played 5 for Mainz. He's now played 2 games at left back for us. First one against Brentford, he got sent off. And then this one on Saturday. So it's not been a success out of position for him. How much flack does Nuno deserve, do you think? How wrong did he get it with hindsight?
I don't watch a lot of French second division football, so I'll just go on the eyesight test, and he's not a left back in the Premier League, is he?
Disappointing lack of commitment to football,
yeah.
But yes.
There'll be some football hipster you can chat to who's a really niche specialist. I'm only about the French second, shut up.
In 2016-17 as well, yeah. Right, sorry, Thames.
But he's not a left back in the Premier League, and there are levels, aren't they? Gary Bettles played centre half for Grimsby, as we all know, but he never did it for Forest. So that's a hindsight mistake. He potentially, if he wanted to involve Niakhate, could have played Murillo at left back, whose attributes I think lend themselves more to that. Then you lose a bit of centre half with Niakhate's relative weakness in the air and the challenges he's had in the penalty box with one-to-one defending. But you look at that goal, I think there were 3 sets of Megs, weren't there? He nipped it round Murillo after he'd had the ball in behind Niakhate. Felipe tried that bizarre splits yoga Pilates position to block it out, and Nico wasn't deep enough to clear that ball away. So there were multiple errors in the lead up to that goal. But you set yourself up with opposition in mind and tactics in mind. And I don't think at any stage Niakhate's attributes were right to defend the threat offered by Villa and to support his left winger going forward. So yeah, it was a mistake, one that he rectified at half time. So let's give him credit. His eyes are wide open. The lad has scored, hasn't he? A perfectly decent, well worked goal from a corner and contributed to the game, but he just looked completely out of sorts. And we're not going to see Niakhate back at left back in these 2 games coming up. So Toff deserves a go if Aina's not ready. I'm not sure what the Tavares issue is, because he'd been going well, had a decent game against West Ham. But there are other considerations as well. Was Felipe's West Ham performance a bit of a a flash in the pan? Is there a fitness issue there with the games coming thick and fast as they are from this point? But one thing for sure is Nuno's crossed Niakhate off that chart of left backs that he has at his disposal. He's solely a centre half now and probably not first pick.
Tavares is a muscle injury I was reading earlier, and it says several weeks, so it could be back end of the season job, which is a blow. But yeah, there's Olorena and Montiel was back on the bench, so Williams can play left back as well, and Harry Toffolo if he gets a kick. We'll come on to that quickly. Kevin says in the comments that Gary did play centre half for Forest and was outstanding, and I know he tells the story of how he played left back for Forest and had an absolute nightmare. I think it was against Southampton or something like that. Brian Clough told him to do a job there and he didn't do it. So talking playing out of position, Prut. So I messaged you last night and said, did you ever play out of position? Because I'm sure I remember you playing right midfield, but not necessarily fullback. And your reply to me was, you never nailed down any position and you bluffed your whole career, which I thought was funny.
Out and out, number 6, yellow card hunter. I know his position.
But you did play a few games right midfield, didn't you? I think I'm right in saying.
And I tell you what, not that I don't think about your questions in depth when you ask me, but what just came to mind, then we played Wolves at the City Ground in a night game. They had Nathan Blake up front with someone else who was as monumentally tough and double hard. And I played centre half. So, I mean, God knows what happened around that for me to be needed to play centre half. And that was, so that would have been, that was very, very early on. That was when Paul was in charge. But it was one of those that we worked on quite a bit up until the game. And it was only 1, maybe 2 games tops. We had a good game against Wolves. I don't know what happened the next game. Hopefully that changed and the specialists came back into it. Played at fullback a couple of times, which fullback 20 years ago is slightly different to what fullback is now, which meant not much overlapping and a lot of kind of staying back and just supporting your winger. In essence, if you are talking about professional footballers, then the logistics of being on a football pitch shouldn't be that alien from you moving from one position to another. As I said earlier on, from fullback to centre half, distance-wise, you're not a million miles away from where you normally hang out. Plus, you need to be able to rely on the player that's in front of you and the player to the side of you, and also options on the ball, because that's what helps a player that maybe is playing in a position that they're not familiar with or overly familiar with, having options on the ball. If he's getting it at fullback and all he sees are numbers of his own players and names, then you're buggered for a start. So that's where communication has to come in. That's where a lot of work done on the training ground has to come in. And I mean, Nuno is a very accomplished coach, a very thorough coach. I'm not thinking for 1 second he went to put the team up on Friday or Saturday, whenever he did it, and Niakhate suddenly thought, oh, right, so I'll be playing fullback then. It completely took him by surprise. The fact that he's done it before in a league that's absolutely nowhere near the Premier League, possibly does have a bit of currency in it. He quite clearly had a shocking first half, but that's one of many Forest players that had a shocking first half of football. These things can absolutely happen. And then you've got to get yourself in at half-time, compose yourself, and just catch your breath. Because it seemed from 4 minutes in, you had a team of Forest players there that were just kind of looking at each other, wondering what was going on, looking for someone to take charge. And like I said, because there's been relative good work done in the run-up to this, I think that's where broadly you can let them off to a certain degree. It can't happen again. You can't have another 45 minutes of football like that, regardless of who they come up again. You do that against Liverpool, you'll be 5-0 down, 6-0 down at half-time, regardless of how strong their side is. They will absolutely destroy Forest if they defend like that. And Man United, you don't know what you're going to get from them, as we're going to talk about in due course on Wednesday night. So it's not... Part of me, as a bit of a cynical older ex-pro, means the professional side of being a footballer, you should know enough about that particular set of positions on the pitch to be able to play them. It's not like you've asked him to go and play number 10, is it? It's not like you've said, Morgan, you're going to have a sit down, Niakhate is going to go and play in your position. It's not that. His first job as a fullback is to defend, and doing defensive work by trade should mean that he should have been better. But as I said, I'll try and mitigate by saying, as a footballer, you do have games like that. You start poorly, you're chasing your tail for the rest of that 45 minutes. And then you try and do something at half time to stem the tide, which they may have done to a certain degree. I saw comments saying it was defeat in the first half and a draw in the second. I understand the sentiment behind that, and I've been sat in dressing rooms where a manager's gone, that first half was terrible, go and win the second half. It means nothing because you don't get a point for winning the second half if you're that poor in the first half. But mistakes were made and looked to be remedied at half time. They just, as I said, it was a proper off day across the board. You can look at the defence. The midfield was non-existent, passive, and it was just made far too easy for players that are very, very good players. There's a great squad that Emery's put together at Villa, and on another day it could have been 5, 6, 7, couldn't it?
Are you feeling sorry for Toff, Greg? Because it feels like he's a bit back on the ropes now and fought his way back in.
Yeah, I mean, it was like not even second choice, was he, for Saturday? And it seemed like he really was the obvious one to go for there. Nuno must have seen something that he thought Niakhate could do that Toff couldn't. You know, it's certainly not his throw-ins. His throw-ins haven't been that effective. As much as we can get them in the box, they're quite slow and loopy, aren't we? It gives the defenders lots of time to get under them. It's not like a Dilap bullet into the middle or anything. So I'm hoping we've learnt a lesson from that, and I feel Toff should start on Wednesday. It's a perfect game for him to get some decent game time in against a quality opposition. If not, then there's something. Sorry. If not, then there's some. Yeah, if Toffolo doesn't play on Wednesday, then I think that's damning, and that's going to show what we expect for the rest of the season, and it won't be seeing much game time at all, because Wednesday is one of the last chances Nuno gets to see players before the important stuff comes up.
Do you think
we're putting great question there, Matt? Sorry to put in about what does it feel like to get subbed at half time? I love the fact that it was aimed at me, because that's obviously happened to me. But it can be. I remember seeing Leeds under Marcelo Bielsa, and Calvin Phillips got dragged after about 20 minutes, maybe even 15 minutes actually in a game. And Marcelo's take on it was, oh, how does Calvin feel? And he was almost kind of, well, don't care how he feels. The team wasn't playing well. I needed to take him out to get something out of this game. And now it depends sometimes. If you're having a proper stinker, then there is the element of relief. But you do, and it's now, you're now in that position that if you do get taken off at half time, then whether you want to talk about the nuances of a football match and what makes an 11, it does just look like your fault, doesn't it? It absolutely looks like your fault. When I was at Sheffield Wednesday, there was we went to Stevenage under Graham Wesley, and we got absolutely battered. I think we ended up getting done 5, but it was 3-0 at half time, and there was a big stand-up row in the dressing room between myself and Rob Jones, who was the skipper at the time, big 9-foot Rob Jones, lovely fella. And he's central defence, I'm central midfield. So obviously I'm saying it's all your fault. And he's obviously saying, well, give us some protection because it's all your fault. And so backwards and forwards. Gary Megson comes in and says, shut up, you've both been crap and you're both coming off. So both instantly killed the argument, sat down, and that was it, done. And then I think Clinton Morrison picked up the baton and gave us his wonderful insight as ever. But that element of being dragged off a football pitch. Yeah, I mean, you never get taken off at half time if you've had an absolute worldie. It is always fundamentally, whether you can call it tactics or whatever, it can be demoralising. Hopefully, it puts you into position for the next game, regardless of changes that you think, well, if I'm on the starting 11 again, I'm going after this. This is going to be my best game after what could possibly have been my poorest game. But it's one that you've got to take on the chin. And broadly, I always think it helps with character building, because there's only one way to get through it, which is to go back out and perform again. That's a real test of the players that have come off early in the game.
Prutz kind of led into what I was going to ask there, Temps, about are we putting too much onus on the defence? Because, the midfield wasn't working. You touched on it there. Do you feel like Sangare is this kind of mythical creature that's going to save us still, and the onus is back on him, and we still haven't nailed this centre-half position? Like Greg said earlier, 4 days ago, we'd have said Felipe's nailed it, and it feels we're a little bit back to square one in a couple of areas of the pitch to me. Am I reading too much into it or not?
Don't think we've got the centre midfield blend right yet. I think there's a lot of hope placed in Sangare because of where he's been and what he's done, but based on what we've seen him do in a Forest shirt, you can't imagine him having 10 consecutive games of consistency, work rate, craft, endeavour, positive passing. But I think he'll get his chance. as might Yatesy, because the adventurousness, the dynamism of Danilo is fantastic, but it does come at the expense at times of that solidity, because he needs to sit deep. We know Dominguez's game is all about pressing high, trying to win high turnovers, being an active presence, leading the press. So that doesn't necessarily follow suit that he's going to sit in front of two centre halves and protect them and keep the ball at bay. So there is a lot of hope for Sangare. He's a bit of a mythical creature. You can be a better player when you're out of the side, but I just want to see it. I just want to see it with my own eyes. I want him to be what he was for PSV, what we've seen him do against quality opposition, because he hasn't had a consistent run for Forest yet. So what's the right blend? Well, Greg's just said it. We've got a week now. We're going to come up against Man United and Liverpool, like two of the most celebrated clubs in the history of world football, and anything could happen. The 3 games after that, everything suggests we're going to be in a game where all 3 results are possible. And I just wonder, given the boldness of Nuno, if he'll stick to his guns, use these 2 games to establish the patterns, do what we've been doing, keep the kind of primary 11 in mind that he's kind of working towards at this moment in time. Yes, we might see some players rested against Man U, but I think they'll be back for Liverpool, and we'll look to those 3 games thereafter as being potentially transformative for our season. Sangare may be back by then, maybe ready to play, but I don't want to place all my faith in a single player that is yet to fulfil his potential for Forest.
No, and Nuno hasn't given a time scale on when he, Bolly, or Reina will be back, which is a bit of a concern. But then, they could just all return on Wednesday, so we'll wait and see. Certainly, there was a spell in the game, Greg, where Origi came on and looked really bright, probably for the brightest he's looked in a Forest shirt. We got back to 3-2, really good goal. We had a couple of chances. Elanga had one, and then Yates had one, but I think we were 4-2 down by then. But there was a spell in the game where we looked like we might somehow turn it around, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Those 15 minutes after the end of the first half, and Origi looked superb for that. And the Yates chance was a huge one. It just spooned off him, didn't it? But that game could have gone any way, and we'd have walked away with a point thinking we'd absolutely robbed him. And I disagree with what I think Mark said in the pre-game, after the game show, that I thought Aston Villa did play well, and their fans were talking about how well they played as well. They were buzzing coming out of that ground. So I do think they had to perform to beat us. Like, again, it was just the mistakes. And going back to the Sangare and Yates and players like that, I don't know if you're going to talk about him all, but Gio Reyna, he's nowhere, is he? Nowhere to be seen. It just seems such a strange loan if he's not going to get game time. So I really want to see him start on Wednesday to see if he is an option, if he is something different to change that midfield setup one way or another. And I think the problem everyone thinks with Reyna is it takes Gibbs White out of the game. But as Nuno's shown with putting Niakhate at left back, he doesn't necessarily have to play in the position he's used to. He's 21 and still learning, and we could see something out of him that hasn't been shown before, especially at Dortmund.
Yeah, I do think Villa played well. I just suppose the question is, how easy did we make it for them to play well? And
it was the mistakes, wasn't it? Other than that, it was a close game. The mistakes cost us 3 goals, really. And we showed how good we are attacking, and we frightened Villa every time we went forward. And Elanga fascinates me because he seems to have these terrible touches that anyone else should be absolutely moaning, and then suddenly he's got the ball or he's shooting after a bad touch. And it's that kind of fearless attitude and quick reactions of making a mistake and correcting them quickly that makes him such a exciting quality player. And we kind of need more than that, more of that. Sorry.
Yeah,
you're right. The key thing is both boxes, though, isn't it? That's what we're talking about. In that those middle portions of the pitch, you can look relatively competitive. And do you know what else you can do without sounding very cynical? You can play it looking relatively competitive as well. But the minute it gets into the box and you don't do the fundamentals, again, best laid plans going completely out the window when you see the sequences of events that ends up with a tap-in for a player that is Villa's most consistent and noticeable threat that's got him in the England squad. So it was a poor attempt at a first tackle, a dangle of a leg from Murillo, and then we talk about that attempted kind of block. It wasn't the John Terry Chelsea vintage of throwing your face in front of a shot and getting in the way of stuff and stopping people in the tracks, was it? It was just so passive and weak. Weak's probably the word. They were just nowhere near it from the start. But credit to, as Greg's saying, Villa are a good team. Villa are a good team. Yeah. And I'm intrigued to see where they end up coming at the end of the season, because financially, obviously, they've got to skirt around certain issues as well, and up against some huge, colossal football clubs. So it's a real. It just seems like a real bitter one to taste. I mean, you mentioned Reina. Have Forest fans seen much of him at all in a red shirt? What's the take on him?
We've not seen enough yet. I think he came on at Bournemouth, and did he start against Bristol City? I can't remember, but I've seen him enough over in Germany to know how good a player he is. And we certainly wouldn't be, he's not going to be on small wages, so it's going to have been quite a bit of an outlay for us. So, maybe it was a just in case someone gets injured and he's ready to go. But Dortmund wouldn't have let him come over here for that, especially after signing a new contract. So I do think he's got to be biding his time and really showing it in training, because there's an absolute quality in there. At 17, he was one of the top prospects in world football, and now at 21 or 22, he's not quite got up there yet. A bit like Hudson-Odoi, really. But we have got those players that have so much potential at such a young age. It would just be exciting to see him in a Premier League Forest team. So, fingers crossed on my part for it. And I'm glad I can't see the comments, because I know I'll be getting slated by certain people.
I just enjoyed that couple that walked past behind you, Greg. They obviously come for a bit of lunch at the Nav. Just looking over, going, who the hell is he talking to?
You're not getting slated, don't worry. And I think he has to start for Man U, otherwise it feels a bit pointless in being here. The thing about mistakes, I suppose, is we've said it's the mistakes so many games. There's only a finite number of games where you can say it's the mistakes before you're playing Championship football next season. So that's probably the thing we have to remedy. As the fourth goal attempts kind of typified that. Like we were still in that game, and then it's just another horrific goal. And it was. What was your take on it? Because I don't think it was all on Bamidele's fault. It was just a pretty shambolic affair all round, wasn't it?
It probably was Bamidele's fault. I saw him at the gym last night, but I didn't mention it. He made a poor pass, didn't he? Danilo did not need that ball there. There was a need to clear the lines, and the whole thing stems from that, because Villa are very drilled, very adept at converting their chances. And it was a good save, actually, despite the Bamidele mistake. Then he tried to recover, tripped over. Souls has done everything right, come out and block that shot, and look where the ball ends up. And that's it, game over. But yeah, I think analysing that, the genesis of that goal is a poor pass into a midfielder with his back to goal. He can do nothing with it. The ball should have gone, or an alternative pass. So yeah, that one is on Bamidele for me, and is another one of those mistakes that you can eradicate. I know what Greg's doing, by the way. His Wi-Fi reminds me of the early days of lockdown, when no one was quite sure how to use Zoom.
Yes.
He's hoping another pandemic starts today, and he can spend 6 months in the Nav with his loyalty card. It's crystal clear to me.
Oh dear! Like that film. What's the film? Shaun of the Dead. Yeah.
So you're going to say Terminal.
No. Just quickly then, before we wrap up and go into any other business, the Man U game, Greg. Like they're going into it on a defeat. They've got no Højlund. I know we were, inconsistent against Villa, but it does feel like a big opportunity. And then even Liverpool, I mean, Prutz was there yesterday. They're literally down to opening the day crash and putting players on the pitch, even though they're very good players. That's a very flippant comment by me.
I've got a feeling Nuno'S might be fit for that one, though.
Well, he's hurdling the barrier and basically doing backflips with Slobozai, or however you say it. Yeah, I know. But how are you feeling about the Man U game, Greg?
Excited, really excited. I mean, how could you not be? You got Man U at home in the cup, ready to get quarterfinals through it. I'm hoping it's not a draw. Hoping we don't have to go up there for another midweek trip, but I really think we can do something. They're not a happy bunch at the minute. The fans are ready to turn again. That's their favourite hobby, isn't it? Turning on their own. So I just feel like it's a massive opportunity after such a disappointing weekend, and we kind of don't have much of a choice other than to play a strong side. And I truly believe we can get something. And these cup runs and these cup games have benefited us. Because, you know, we need to see these players play, and we need more game time. We need the keeper to be playing more games. That's only going to benefit him. So, yeah, I see no reason why we can't really go for them and get into the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, which, you know, as a new Premier League side, that's the excitement. That's kind of why we're here, isn't it? You know, go on these cup runs and get big days out and see what happens. So, you know, it's going to be a massive night. Huge atmosphere, and I really think we can get something.
Continuing the excellent professionalism of this podcast, Temps is now on his phone because his laptop battery's died. Hello, Temps.
God.
I thought whilst he was gone, I was going to talk about how he mentioned the number 6 earlier, and I noticed he's got his own number down at Trent Bridge now. So just to continue as professional sports person.
How would you fancy that Man United game then, Prutz? Because you look at them, I mean, they look as fallible as anyone, especially without Højlund. It feels like that's a big miss for them.
It is. No, I'm actually going to the game, so I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be hopefully the thing that Forest fans have been able to do on nights and particular games like this is to generate the atmosphere. So I think that's one box that you can tick off now, that the platform will be there. The second box is, can the players step up to it? Now, if there's wholesale changes, then that maybe freshens things up off the back of a very disappointing performance and result. If it's players that were involved against Villa, then they've got a very quick turnaround to put things right, albeit, yes, of course, in the FA Cup and not for league points. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. You talked about a soft underbelly earlier on about Forest. Man U are prone to that. Exactly, completely. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot in that side. To be a little bit, what's the word? Not cynical about, because as much as on one hand sometimes it looks like Erik ten Hag's getting a real tune out of the players, on another sometimes it looks like they're as disparate as ever. And there's plenty of players there that can be got at. I'm not saying for 1 second that Forest just go hell for leather and go flying through. Flying at them and allow themselves to expose at the back. Obviously, Villa on Saturday would teach that lesson, hopefully. But I think this is where the infuriating inconsistency comes in, because you get the feeling that you are going to see a Forest performance, potentially a really good result, because of how bad they were the game before, which it goes with that roller coaster of being a Forest fan, doesn't it? Oh, it's great. Oh, disappointing. Oh, it's great again. So that until there is that real consolidation and consistency, that's how it's going to be. But Forest at home in the FA Cup, that's as good a game to get back up and running as possible. It's not Man City, it's not Liverpool, is it? Obviously, that's in a few days' time. But a misfiring and at times infuriating Man United side on your own patch with Forest and a point to prove potentially is the next best game.
It feels like a big week ahead, Temps, you think? Because Liverpool also play Southampton in the FA Cup, and we'll see how they shape up coming out of that. But I don't know, this thing about good time to play them, it does feel like a good time, even though I wouldn't expect anything from the game, but I would maybe have some hope at least for that one.
Well, the side has beat Chelsea in the League Cup, hasn't it? But there are some unrecognised names and faces that finished that game. There are a couple of reckless challengers that have stretched their injury list even further. So it is a good time to play them. And we've had a nice time against the City ground in the not too distant past, haven't we? So, look, it's the run of 3 games thereafter that I think is moving time for Forest. It could determine if we're going to be in a relegation scrap come the end of the season, or if we're going to ease ourselves away and not be sweating quite so much on the points tariff that'll come our way at some point in time. But yeah, relatively good time to play them. I love Greg's enthusiasm. I love the fact that he's already booking his hotel. He's probably done one of those cancelable rooms for the FA Cup final somewhere near Wembley, such is the optimism of this fella. Man U
semi and final.
Semi and the final. There he is. What a pro.
So I'm less optimistic about Man U because I think we'll take the opportunity to rest one or two, to try some new things. It certainly won't be an unchanged side. We're going to Liverpool with a day we can all enjoy, but there's 3 games after that. They're absolutely huge. And I'm backing us for that to be the period of this season where we do ease ourselves away, where we do build a bit of a gap and we start to look up a little bit to that mini league that runs from about 13th to 20th. So that's my plan for the rest of the season.
Excellent. Your sign's a bit dodgy, but we're kind of getting to the finish line now, so don't worry. A quick word to thank our second sponsors for this episode, Brewed Backer, owned by Forest season ticket holder Danny Baker, and Noise Consultancy. So if you've got any health and safety issues for your business, they're the people for you, and a link to their website is in the description for this episode. Right, as I say, any other business? Greg, anything from you before we depart?
Always. I've got a question for Prutz first, actually, after his social media posts at the weekend. Muller Kintyre, or you'll never walk alone after your little love fest.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. No, that's a really good question. And obviously, playing to the audience on this, there's only one answer, Greg, isn't there? Come on, you must know me by now, mate. Pathetic. Please like me. No, because I watched the lovely 90-year-old woman that went to go and see the Forest game, listening to that, and having worked at Forest on the gantry and having seen it firsthand at Wembley. Yeah, no, I'll go for Muller Kintyre. Do you know why as well? Because I think it's a vastly underrated McCartney track anyway. I love it as a tune. But yeah, that echoing down through the city ground is wonderful. Obviously, You Never Walk Alone, iconic. Jerry and the Pacemakers, but I think Muller Kintyre just pips it. What an obvious answer that was.
When did we start playing it? Because the old lady was interviewed for Nottingham TV, and I know she said she wanted to hear it one last time, but she also said last time she went to the City Ground they were playing Robin Hood, so it would have been the first time she'd ever heard it anyway. So were they playing that in your day, Prutz?
That is a very, very good question.
I think it's more recent than that.
But it dates back, doesn't it? It wasn't a Forest pre-season or post-season training camp when a lot of the players were singing it in a bar and the fans picked up on it.
Very good. Yeah, I think it was Gary Birtles said that.
That's what it might be.
Yeah.
And it was, and then it must have come away somewhere and then got brought back in. Yeah, that's a very good point.
The fans have always sang it, but it wasn't an anthem, I don't think, till like the early 2000s maybe. So I think she would have got the back end of it. That's for sure.
We're not
not according to her. She's live for a free Forest ticket.
Oh my God, Thames.
The alternative take on Vera. Go on.
Poor Vera. I have got one more thing as well, just about the Trent Nav, really, because obviously 2 big home games coming up, and they've been great to us Forest fans. You know, they've got some big plans for some post matches coming up in the future as well, which they're going to announce soon. So just come and support a local business if you are going to have a pre or post match pint. Down here's the place to be, that's for sure.
Well said, Greg. Well said, Greg. Making that sponsor worthwhile. And he's right. You're a good man. What was I going to say? Oh, if anyone knows when we did start playing Muller Kintyre, put it in the comments, because I think it was like mid-2000s, maybe. I'm not quite sure, as a post-match anthem. Prutz, anything from you before we depart?
Spoke to the Forest chairman yesterday when I was at the game, who was a tremendously nice man. I was asking him. It's funny because when you start talking, you start with a bit of small talk, and then suddenly they think you're putting your journalistic head on, which, as you all know, doesn't exist in my head. But so I was asking Tom about the potential. Obviously, any update on the points? And he went, "Not a clue." He said, "I'm not just saying that because it's you," but he said, "Not a clue." So that's another chat for another day. But he seemed super positive. He talked about working in and around the owner and how that. Has never a dull moment, as I'm sure we can all imagine. But no, it was just nice to hear, and what the plans that they've got and the kind of setup and the structure seems extremely sound. Obviously, time will tell with regards to the other side of it. But no, it was good to see him. It was a very decent game. I'm looking forward to another very good game on Wednesday at the City Ground.
Very good. Temps, anything from you before we go?
Yeah, I was just going to mention a Forest fan that I know called Rob Adcock, who's a director, producer, presenter for the BBC,
and he has a series out called Imposter Syndrome. It's on the iPlayer at the minute. There's some brilliant interviews with sportsmen and entertainment personalities discussing their kind of mental approach to their craft. My favourite episode is probably the Bradley Wiggins episode, but there's all sorts on there for you. And in true Alan Partridge style, he's trying to get a second series. So if you want to support a fellow Forest fan, jump on the iPlayer and watch Imposter Syndrome. It's a great use of your time. And I know he's watching today because he's just asked me which Turkish barber Prutz uses to look so sharp all the time.
Just do the middle and leave the rest of it. It just gets a done, get out.
Harry Gurney's very interesting on imposter syndrome. If you spoke to him about it, Temps, he spoke very well about it. Right, I've got quite a few, so right, I'll rattle through them. Quick word for Sam Bowles. Died at the weekend. Great footballer. Didn't have a great time at Forest, but important to recognise his contribution to the game. And a shout out for Nick Marshall, friend of yours, Prutz.
Yes.
Former academy director of Forest, now Liverpool Academy number 2. Messaged him last night. Very proud man. I've seen all his kids on the pitch at Wembley.
Yeah.
So
was it Temps? Did you say about recognisable names? And you're absolutely right. But then you rattle them off and you go, Christ, that's Neil Danz's son. That's Lee Clark's son. And it just makes you feel, as we all of a certain age, you're going, right, so I played against his dad. So that now makes me really, really old, doesn't it?
Yeah.
True. But Nick was very happy last night. He's a lovely guy. So pleased for him, friend of the show.
Oh, yeah, I bet his players. Can you imagine what's dropping into his kind of bonus schedule now?
First team bonus, yeah. Cup winners bonus.
Cha-ching.
Absolute cynics. Very good. And then the other thing I was going to say was there were a couple of episodes last week I'll give another quick plug for, because not saying watch my stuff, but they are quite good. So the Ian Finch one on Friday about Match of the Day and his career was really good. And the main takeaway from it was, amazingly, you can't be a complete dullard and present live sport on TV. You have to be actually quite clever and good at it, Prutz. So, yeah.
So when that happens, I'll tell you.
Yeah, but that was really interesting with Ian. And then the Matt Ford one as well. That was great. We periodically get really nice emails about the podcast. And we had a few there. Two in particular, one from Danny Tring. So a shout out to Danny, who's a regular listener and supporter of the podcast. And then the other one was from Gary Lamb. And I don't normally read out emails because I find it incredibly self-indulgent, because some podcasts do. But I'll just read this one because it was nice. Morning, Matt. I've just watched the Matt Ford episode for the second time. I think it may well be the greatest episode of any podcast I listen to. I mean, I don't know about that, Gary, but thank you. I cried, laughed, and find myself saying yes, as it all seemed on my wavelength. A bit of history: as I started going to Forest in the late 70s, very lucky I know. I was a season ticket holder for many seasons. As I hit 40, I started to struggle with my health. Diagnosed with Crohn's disease at 43, and I've had 2 bowel restrictions so far. At 46, I had to give up work. I was in recruitment due to health leading to financial difficulties and severe depression. The last 7 years, I've struggled with pain. I'm on 2 lots of morphine a day, as well as immunosuppressants and pills for depression. My life's now in the house, and I really struggle to leave the home. My head won't let me, but I fight it. And even though as I fight it, I never go out for more than an hour or 2. I stopped drinking because my social life is gone. Nottingham Forest are my tonic. A Reds win can make me feel better, energized, and just makes my world a better place. I have a really close couple of friends who I've known from school who visit me occasionally on match days to watch the Reds with me, as it's always a highlight. You do lose contact, and so these 2 are godsends, as is your podcast. I feel yourself, Temps, Greg, Mikey, Emily, Mark, Fletch, et al. You're the et al. Prutz, are my mates who I can now listen to every day. The inspiration Matt uses is so good. He seems to explain how I feel some days perfectly and a lot more eloquently. I haven't given up on going to the City Ground again, but needs a lot of time until I can see that as a possibility, although getting tickets these days is impossible. Apologies for the rambling nature of this message, but like I say, I'm usually full of drugs. Keep up the great work, you Reds. Gary Lamb. So, yeah, I don't know. It was nice. I've touched the heartstrings of a few of us. And I know Matt Ford as well. But just the kind of what the podcast can do for people. And I do take stock in, this is self-indulgent, isn't it? But, what we do, hopefully, if it helps anyone, then I think it's a really good thing. And even though sometimes we get abuse and we put ourselves out there, well, we don't really. But sometimes you get negative comments and that's fine. But for every negative comment, the power of one good comment. And, if we can help people, that's fantastic. So,
well said, Matt. Well said, mate. It's fundamentally a force for good. So if you can't be self-indulgent on your own podcast, when can you be? So no, Matt, I think you're doing some terrific work, as all 3 of you are.
And whenever he is ready to get to the ground as well. We can certainly help him, that's for sure.
Yeah, give us a shout, Gary. We'll try and sort you out. And thanks to everyone who dropped in nice comments about Matt's interview, especially from Matt. Obviously, really fantastic words. So do remember to check that one out. And as always, I should do a better job of this as well. If you haven't already, do us a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. Do consider being a channel member. Give us a good review on iTunes, etc., etc. It all massively helps keep spreading the word. Right, we are back tomorrow at 11 a.m. for a full Man United preview with Emily and Mikey. Then Wednesday post-match, Thursday match review, Friday match preview for Liverpool, and then Saturday back again for another post-match show. So a busy week ahead. Greg Mitchell, thank you very much.
No worries, enjoyed it once the technical issues got out of the way. Great to see you, Pruts, as ever, and Temps, of course.
And Temps, of course. At the end. Pruts, thank you very much.
Pleasure. I've just seen Temps's post on Instagram about the grey hurricane that was flying around West Bridgeford this morning on a run. Maybe. And then obviously, did you see his post-run sustenance, which was a banana and a pint of orange juice? So make sure you're not too far from the loo, mate. My God.
Hey, I've got the Nottingham AGM tonight, so I'll be tied to Sutton Bridge till 9 o'clock. So I need to get these vitamins into me now. And Greg Mitchell is such a force for good. He hasn't even mentioned that he ran a big charity dinner on Friday night and raised lots of cash for Stand Against MND. That's just an everyday thing for Greg. Doesn't even want the recognition.
Well,
Jono, your teammate was there. Jono was there, and God, he was generous as well. So shout out to him. Gemmo was there. I didn't really see much of his wallet, but yeah,
didn't see Gemmo's hand in the auction, did we, Greg? Jono couldn't get his hand down.
Yeah, absolutely. We should say former friend of the show, Gemmo, as well.
Still a friend of the show, not former.
Former. Shots fired.
Chose somewhere else.
Oh my
there isn't
word.
any of the. There's no other ones worth listening to, is there? That was what you were all saying before we started.
Not at this time of day, no.
Definitely not. Oh my God. Right. We're all pals. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll leave it there. Back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Have a good day, and we shall see you tomorrow.